The turkeys are starting to strut and gobble, and I've even heard a few people talk about how some false morels are starting to pop. So that means it's time to start thinking about how you're going to close in on a mature tom. For some of us, it may be a challenge just to look at a jake, let alone a nice tom. It seems turkeys are pretty feast or famine depending on your location, and if you haven't done any habitat work to promote the population where you hunt, or you don't hunt on a well-managed cattle farm, you could have a long and frustrating season. A lot of times, the difference between a successful turkey hunt and just taking a nap in the woods comes down to how much work you put in leading up to that hunt. Well, how much work you put in and at least a good amount of luck. So in this video, we're going to go over 3 tips to help you close in on a nice tom and fill those tags this spring. But if you fill those tags, just please don't, take those stupid Instagram trophy photos. If you do that, all you do is just look like an idiot. But before we get into those tips, do me a favor, and if this is the first time on my channel, hit that subscribe button and make sure you click the bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. And the first tip to locating toms is you got to know where it is they like to roost in. At this point, I am not talking about the specific tree that they are roosting in. We'll get to that in a little bit. But what I'm talking about is the areas that are more likely to have those trees that turkeys will like to roost in. If all you're thinking about is finding that specific roost tree, you could be walking a long time trying to find it. You have to narrow down your scope to find those high percentage areas. Turkeys will roost in areas that provide protection from the wind and give them a lot of sun exposure to warm them up in the mornings. And they like roost trees that are close to their preferred food and water sources. Mature trees are often the preferred trees to roost in because the younger trees tend to have, more flimsy limbs. Trees on steep hillsides are preferred, especially if they are next to an open field. That way they can go straight from the roost down to this field. Turkeys don't fly very well, so if they got a clear shot to an open field where they can eat or bug or strut or whatever it is they need to do. Another good place to find a roost tree is if you can find a mature tree that has some limbs hanging over water. Keep in mind though that roost trees are highly variable depending on the area you live and hunt. These aren't hard and fast rules, but they will help you narrow down your search so you're not wasting a lot of time in those low chance areas. And the second tip is once you've narrowed down your area to search in, get out there the night before and try to roost them. Getting out there the night before and finding exactly what tree they are roosting in dramatically increases your chances of a successful hunt. Now, I know this tip seems very basic. I mean, just find out what tree they're in and go there and hunt the next morning. And it really is pretty simple if you look at it at its face value. But the saying is, roosted does not mean roasted. There are plenty of ways to screw this up. Get out in the early to mid-afternoon and go to places where you've either seen or heard turkeys before, or in those high percentage areas we talked about earlier. Bring your binoculars with you, sit out in the open, well, not the right out in the middle of it, but sit to where you have a good view of an open field and just watch and wait. When you do this, you will either see those turkeys work that field or you will hear them in other areas. Try to get as close as you can without risking spooking them, and then just see where they go. Now, once you've figured out what tree they go into, or at the very least what hillside or area they like to roost in, that's the easy part. The hard part is sneaking out of there so you don't bust them up, and then figuring out your plan to get there in the morning to hunt them without, again, alerting them to your presence, because it does you no good to put in the effort to figure out where they're roosting if you're going to just bust in there in the morning and screw it all up. And the third tip to finding turkeys during the season is if you can't roost them or they're roosting on another property, go for the old shock gobble. A shock gobble is, just like it sounds, an involuntary gobble reaction to really any sound. It could be an owl hoot, it could be a crow call, it could be a coyote howl, it could be as simple as the truck door slamming. And that's especially helpful if you're going with kids who just can't seem to remember that you got to shut the door quietly. During turkey season, they can slam that door, get a shot gobble, and most likely it will get their hearts going. Use whichever call you are best at and try to get a turkey to gobble back at you. If you can't get a turkey to gobble where you are, you can't get that shock reaction, move on to the next likely area. There are a lot of hunters that will drive from spot to spot using their crow call so they can figure out where the toms are. Now, just make sure you probably ought to just turn off your truck so you can hear that response from far away. Obviously, don't shoot anything out of your truck. Don't be those guys. use your truck, drive to a different spot, use your crow call. If you hear a gobble, get out and try to close the distance. If you don't hear anything, drive on. Now, if you're going to use a turkey call to try to figure out where they are, which you probably will if it's past first light, they're out of the roost, use a box call, because a box call, the sound is going to travel a lot farther than your other types of calls. What I'll do is I'll use the box call to see if I can get a reaction. And once I do, or if I do, I will switch to my pot call and try to call them into an area I think I can get them to go to. And if all else fails, you're not getting a gobble response to really anything, you could always just sit quietly and wait in a likely area. Sit there quietly, use your box call every 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, and just wait to see if something comes in that just doesn't want to gobble back. There are a lot of call-shy gobblers out there. And make sure you don't give up too soon. I mean, it's 9 o'clock, you think that, all the turkeys are gone, you're not going to get anything, and you go home. There are a lot of turkeys that get shot around lunchtime, so keep that in mind if you're not seeing anything. So that was 3 tips to helping you find turkeys this season. If you have any more tips, make sure you leave those down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you liked this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.